This presentation focuses on how KYC Portal assists gaming operators with the B2C side of player automation, of KYC automation. So if we had to look at some of the most common setups in gaming B2C environments, we usually have operators who have one core system to which multiple online brands, multiple online games are hooked up to. And often we find the situations where operators have multiple brands and also multiple core systems. They would have purchased or taken over other or brands which have their own core system, which is different from the backend, from the central backend of the entire operation. So KYC Portal sits in the back office and the internal systems of operators installed in the local environment. It's up to the gaming operator if it's installed on their own server or the cloud. And there are various ways how clients integrate KYCP to their operations. One of the common ways is where through the multiple core systems via the API of KYC Portal, the information is received from the players through the online portals, goes to the core systems, and then from the core systems it's pushed into KYC Portal, and then KYC Portal updates back the core systems with the data that is needed. However, we also have a very common setup where the client, the gaming operator, the online brand itself posts the players via the API, so creates players via the API the second a new player registers or updates their data, and then KYC Portal pushes the streamlined data to the core systems. Irrespective of which method you use, all integration with KYCP happens via the API that comes shipped with KYC Portal itself. This API has a sandbox, it also has all the documentation. In fact, clients usually integrate with KYC Portal themselves. We do have some customers who have asked us to do the integration for them. One of the most important elements in KYCP once you hook up all the brands or all the different CRMs you have into KYCP is the concept of the single customer view. So KYCP has a module that allows it to understand the uniqueness of players across your system. I'm going to jump to the actual application itself over here to show you how this is done and how the system works. So for example, over here I have a setup, a regularity process in KYCP set up for a particular brand or particular game. In the fields column, where you define the data that you want to collect on a subject, like in this case, for example, the player, this is where you define the entire data set of what fields you want to collect in KYCP against a particular subject. The system over here allows you to define in KYC Portal what makes a subject unique across the system. And there are two types of uniqueness. So if I had to start, for example, from the obvious ones, if I go in the document requirements, over here I'm telling the system that should the number of the identity document on its own match any other player that's coming in, obviously alert me that is the same person, the same player, irrespective if he's coming from one brand or the other. However, the system also has what we call a combination key. And this, again, you define it on any type of field that you collect on players. This is usually set on data that does not change across identities, for example. So we see clients who set it on the country, on the nationality, on the country of birth, date of birth, occupation sometimes. However, we also see customers who set it on the IP login of the actual player. The system will use this combination key then to be able to identify for you and merge into one view the concept of a single customer view across all your brands. Once you have the player, especially a single customer view in KYCP, there are various data sets that then can be used to create automated risk, to create workflows, to trigger actions in other systems. And over here, I'm going to give you an example of different types and categories of data that customers use every now and then. The first one is the payment methods that this player is using. Again, remember, not in one brand, but across all the brands where the single customer plays. So the system over here allows you to define the payment methods. So for example, if I had to click on the preview, over here we can see a setup where, based on the payment method itself, based on the issuing country, whether it's 3D secure or not, whether it's the account holder's name, who is the same as the player name, the system allows you to define all of the variables that you want at any point in time, and it also allows you to cater for multiple payment methods. So throughout the journey of the player, from day one, it's not only catering for one payment method but for any payment method that the player is using throughout the whole journey with us across all the brands. The system then allows you to associate risk with the type of payment method, whether, for example, the account holder is different from the player itself based on the issuing country, allowing you also to define how this should contribute to the overall risk of the player. Another data set that is often used are the threshold updates, and these are very important because of the regularity aspect. Again, the system allows you to create any aspect of thresholds or deposits. For example, in this case, we're seeing the total deposits across brands or the total wins across brands. We can also set and do based on the limit reached in a number of days across all the brands. So this allows you to be able to then even create rules based on values being reached, based on certain thresholds being reached, to increase risk, to request or to automate enhanced diligence, for example, allowing you to be able to automate all the aspects of players across brands. Another data set that is often used are the game types. Some operators increase or decrease the risk or ask for different documentation, for example, on the type of game that the player is involved in. Again, this could be multiples, so you're keeping over here the aspect of what game types this player is playing in to be able to even associate combined risk, for example. If the player is playing poker and the deposit is higher than 2,000, it instantly increases the risk. Another very important factor that is used for risk are the IP locations of each login. So the system, again, over here, allows you to automate and record all the types of IPs and the respective country, obviously, from where that player is logging in, to be able to increase the risk or even stop the player from playing should it not be in line with your policy. Another data set that is used very often is the source of wealth and source of funds. The system KYC Portal allows you to digitize the questionnaires for source of wealth and source of funds, and allows you even to send them to the player to be able to fill them in for you instantly, even auditing and digitizing the process of source of wealth and source of funds, leading obviously, again based on the answers, to automated risk, to automated actions. Last but not least is salary checks. This is something that most clients also use. So for example, depending on your policy and how you work, the system over here allows me to dictate and ask out of the player the employment status, the occupation, the annual salary bracket that the player has told us that he has, but also the ability to understand, if we already have it as a data set, the market salary bracket. This then allows you to create rules on variances to increase the risk, to understand if the player is out of the norm for that particular occupation. All these data elements, these are an example, the system allows you to set whatever data elements you want at any point in time. However, whatever you set in the system is then being used to automatically calculate risk in real time. So the system allows you to build all your risk based on all the fields, field values, based on rules, logic, based on time. So the system is then constantly calculating the risk value of a player across all my brands. If I had to show you how this looks, so the system on a player over here shows me the risk dial in real time based on all the factors of risk that are set by your compliance team. If you click on the risk dial, the system shows me various aspects. So yes, the risk of the applicant itself. It also shows me risk over time. So from the very first day that this player joined as a player, our company, the system shows me how risk changed, how the risk moved, for example, in this case from medium to low. It also allows me to go back to a particular snapshot when the bracket of risk changed to be able to understand what at that point in time did the player have as data to be able to be in that category of risk. The system also shows me the full breakdown of risk based even on the categories that you define within your system, whether it's geography, product, interface, etc. This risk element, this risk aspect in KYCP is automating the entire risk-based process, allowing you to print it obviously as well at any point in time, but without the need to have any human effort involved at any point in time across all your subjects. KYCP then allows you to be able to define rules, workflows, and what should the system do based on that real-time risk. So yes, apart from moving applications across teams, highlighting, notifying MLROs, etc., there are three main elements. The first one is the AML element, and the AML element can be of various types depending on how you want to tackle it in the system. So we have most clients who simply stop at the aspect of understanding the type of AML issues that we have on the player, whether it's reported by the internal CRM, whether it's automatically set over here based on a certain rule happening. However, the system also has the option of allowing you to embed real-time transaction monitoring for real-time AML patterns to be able to, on any transaction or set of transactions, trigger risk, trigger workflows, and trigger what needs to be done. Next in line is the due diligence from a documentation perspective. So the system allows you, based on the risk, based on the field values, to define what documents are needed at any point in time. So what you're doing here is automating the obligation of document requirements on a player, in this case, based on real-time values. If the player changes something in my account, if the risk of a player changes because of transactions, because of thresholds, the system allows you to define, like we're seeing in this case, when it should alert either the player or my team of what document is needed. For example, over here we're seeing a source of wealth, a source of funds declaration is needed the second that the risk band of the player reaches high. These rules are not only on risk, but even on field values. I can say if the player's country of residence is a particular country, I also need the bank reference. So the system allows you to automate the policy, and then it alerts you the second something happens. This also reduces the risk exposure that you have in between reviews. So the second that a player becomes high risk, the system is going to alert you automatically. Last but not least is the aspect of KYC checks. So these are the third parties that you use for PEP, sanctions, at risk media. As we know, one of the biggest time wasters over here on this service is the element of the human element of your team in having to check, wait for results, see if there are any results, and so on and so forth. So KYC Portal allows you to hook any third party of your choice into it. So we'll hook up the integration for you. The system would allow you to run searches and see the data that your third party providers are providing on the particular subject. In this case, what you're seeing here, the provider is Accuracy 6. It's up to you to choose which third-party provider you want to hook up on players. However, what you're seeing here is a result of the data on a player, in this case a matched player. The system allows you also, and this is very important, to set automated rules. For example, I only want that any player who's reached high risk status, it instantly puts that player on monitor. And this is very important because, again, you're removing the reliance on the human element in having to go in and set each and every player. This rule-based approach can be set on various types. So, for example, I can set it based on the entity type, whether it's a player, whether it's a beneficial owner playing, for example. I can set it on any field on a player. So I can say, listen, the second that the threshold of a player reaches 2,000 or higher, instantly put this person on a monitor. If I don't want to put them on a monitor, I can also set the system to automatically search it for me. So yes, I don't want this person to be monitored daily. I just want that this person, the system KYCP runs a search instantly and then alerts me if there are any matches. On the risk of the player, as we already saw, application status. So over here I can say, listen, if the application status of this player has become approved, instantly put this person or this application on monitor, and also the application risk, which is different from the entity risk. Over there, what we're doing is automating the obligation of checks with third parties and also the peace of mind that the entire database of your players is actually screened based on the risk or the values that you define. So what we're seeing over here with KYC Portal, irrespective of how many brands you have online, irrespective of how many players are logging in, the system via the API is updating KYCP with all the data. It's updating the KYCP with new players, merging them if they should be merged. It's updating the data of existing players if the players change the data up here. And then KYCP, based on how you set it, it's constantly creating and updating the risk perception of a player in real time and also updating your CRM based on what you decide. And this is very important because then KYCP gives your compliance teams a full view of what they need to see, not only at player level, but even as an overall company level. So for example, apart from the notifications, apart from the workflows, the system then gives the overall aspect of reporting, understanding how many players I have across which brands, being able to split it by status, for example, and being able to split it by the team. The overall risk of my company. So the outer dial over here is showing me the risk that I have of all the players. So in this case, all my players across all my brands, most of them are low risk. However, I have fractions over here of medium and high risk. The system over here allows me even to split the risk by brand, by program, to be able to understand which program, which brand is leading to the higher risk. The system also has an inbuilt report builder that allows you to then create custom reports in CSV format that should run daily, weekly for regularity purposes, all based on the overall view of your players across the system. That is how a KYC portal can help with B2C player automation. Should you want or need to see a full demo, kindly contact us.